So, dear friends, I'm now going to offer a talk on the Diamond Sutra before I think John puts us into breakout rooms to have Dharma sharing. So, the Diamond Sutra is a Buddhist teaching on the art of taking care of ourselves and our planet. Within Thay's translation, the sutra's full name is The Diamond That Cuts Through Illusion. Because studying and practicing this sutra can help us cut through our confusion and wrong views and transcend them. It offers us insights into transforming dualism, which causes a great deal of suffering for ourselves, for others, and for the planet. And once we deal with this non-duality, we can actually have more reverence for the earth and more peace within ourselves, our families, our communities, the workplace, and with other nations. In the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha and one of his most accomplished students, the Venerable Subhuti, use apparently contradictory language to help us shine a light and look at our thinking and the way that we have a limited categories of thought. When the first Western scholars read the sutra, they thought it was talking absolute nonsense. However, what it was trying to do was to wake us up to non-discrimination and non-duality. Thay tells us that the language of the Diamond Sutra, although mysterious, can lead us to greater understanding and personal and collective freedom. Within Thay's book, here it is, The Diamond That Cuts Through Illusion, Thay tells us to take our time and not rush to the commentary, but to really gently and slowly read the sutra, and then gently and slowly read the commentaries with our own experience, our own happiness and suffering. Because although the sutra is an ancient text, it can help us understand the causes and conditions of our feelings of separation with ourselves, with the Sangha, with other people, and with the world. In the sutra, the Buddha constantly advises us to look at the non-self elements within ourselves. And looking at ourselves like this, recognizing that really we are made up of non-self elements, water, earth, fire, air, consciousness, our ancestors' DNA, will help us break free of thinking that we're a separate self. When we do this, we can regularly recognize that we are part of the earth and we are part of the cycles of the planet, but we're not the purpose of the cycles of the planet. So we're part of the cycles of the planet, but we are not the cycle's purpose. And we must teach this to others, not just in words, but the way that we walk, the way that we talk, in many ways, to help people remove themselves from the notion that we are a separate self. Sometimes we have to do this just by listening, just by using all of our senses to get in touch with the world and get in touch with other people. Sometimes without immediately jumping to solutions for the problems that we perceive. Making sure that we say things in an appropriate way for the audience we are speaking to or being with. I can remember a few years ago working with refugees on behalf of this community. And I felt it was important because many of the refugees were suffering from trauma of being in a war zone, to not touch the wounds that they were suffering. So I spent a lot of time just handing out food and clothes and washing the dishes alongside other refugees, in order that I got to know them and that they got to know me. So even though I had good intentions, I wouldn't say things or do things that would cause them more suffering. For example, I'd worked in local government and the NHS for many years. However, a lot of the refugees didn't go to local government and NHS for a lot of their health and social problems because they didn't trust officialdom. And I was really worried, having worked in the NHS and in local government as an official, that just by the way that I spoke, the way that I thought, the way that I walked, I wouldn't be seen by them as somebody that was one with them. So I had to understand how they talked, how they drank their tea, how they smiled, how they nodded, how they left silences, how they welcomed each other, before I began to offer the intervention of mindfulness practice and Thay's teachings in order to ease their suffering. And I think too often I forget this. And because of that, there is duality rather than non-duality when I'm trying to ease suffering. I'm just going to invite the bell for the second part of the talk. So please come back to your breathing and smiling. This month is Black History Month. And during this time, it's easy for me to be forgetful and think in terms of the oppressed and the oppressor. So, duality. At last week's morning of mindfulness, Rahina spoke very clearly of her journey from anger, fear, demonizing, seeing others as wrong, to developing a mind of compassion, understanding, love, and the eyes of non-duality. However, I don't know about you, but I find this journey from non-dualism, dualism to non-dualism, as a difficult one. Sometimes I tend to think as the person is bad, the politician, the businessman who wants to start some fracking, the family member or Sangha member who's written something or said something that I disagree with. However, in the Diamond Sutra, no one is called bad, no one is called wrong, and no one is gossiped about. There's no blaming, there's no discrimination, there's no superiority, inferiority, or equality complex. Applying the mind of non-duality and non-discrimination to everyone and everything is sometimes very difficult for me, and I have to focus a lot of my time and energy on not having that separation between myself and others, between myself and the earth. For example, it's very easy for me to have compassion and understanding for the person with learning disability or autism who's perhaps in poverty, who's perhaps socially isolated. However, when I'm working, it's very difficult sometimes for me to have the same understanding, the same open heart, the same compassion with the local authority commissioner or NHS official who may not have developed a package of care that the person is entitled to. But of course, if I'm listening to Thay's teachings, then my heart should be open to both. Yes, I should talk about the consequences of people's actions, but in terms of compassion, in terms of understanding, I must work to understand the politician, the businessman, the person that cuts down the forest, who pollutes the rivers, who says something that I don't agree with, the Sangha member who says something I don't agree with. In the book, The Diamond That Cuts Through Illusion, Thay teaches about the modern-day bodhisattva. I find this teaching very inspiring. In traditional Buddhist teachings, a bodhisattva is someone who delays enlightenment in order to help ensure that they help others, all other sentient beings, cross to the other shore of enlightenment and non-duality. I aspire to be a modern-day bodhisattva, and my volition is to continue to develop the qualities of compassion, love, understanding, taking others to the shore of freedom. Thay offers great, fearless, practical examples of this. For example, during the Vietnam War, he would, despite the bombing and the shots fired, Thay would selflessly go into Vietnamese villages and offer humanitarian aid to the villagers, rebuild their villages. And then he would go to the American soldiers that had bombed the villages, that had shot the villagers, his countrymen, and offer them humanitarian aid too, knowing both peoples were suffering. The way that I think I can walk towards that way of thinking, that action, is with the help of formal practice, touching the earth to connect with my blood ancestors, blood descendants, spiritual ancestors, spiritual descendants, touching the earth to connect with all species, with the earth, and realizing when I connect with the earth that I am not just this body. I am not separate from the past and the present, and when I die, that is not the end. We think sometimes, like a book, that it has a start, middle, and end. This is not the case. If we live in the historic dimension, but see the ultimate dimension, we can become a lot more fearless. Thay often uses the wave and the ocean to help us with this. The wave in the historic dimension sees itself as separate from the ocean, sees itself separate from the other waves, and begins to contrast itself to the other waves. But when it realizes that it is part of the ocean, that it is also part of all the other waves, then it becomes a lot less fearful. Thay tells us that non-duality is the essential characteristic of true love. And practicing love meditation, developing the four immeasurable minds, can help us again to move towards non-duality. The Buddha tells us to teach the Diamond Sutra to others, explaining and embodying it according to the way things are, without getting listeners caught up in the concepts of lifespan and self. And we can teach this not just by talking, but the way that we walk, the way that we sit, the way that we listen, and the way that we smile. The Buddha said, if a bodhisattva is caught in the self or this lifespan, they are not a true, authentic bodhisattva. Of course, the biggest teacher, the biggest support is our Sangha. By ourselves, we cannot deal with our own negative habits and suffering. But in a Sangha, people can remind us to practice mindfully, to practice non-duality. If we live alone or just come into contact with just a few people, our suffering and habit energies can grow and can grow. But practicing with a Sangha that focuses on nourishing our positive seeds, looking deeply, sharing, can help us transform the idea of duality that binds us. And we can begin to embody and transform the teachings for others. Finally, Thai tells us that the practice of the Diamond Sutra is to try to dismantle the shell that separates us from others in order to live happily within ourselves and with the people around us and the planet. So if you're not able to smile that much, if you don't have that much peace, if there isn't happiness in your heart, please look deeply with your Sangha to find out why. Look deeply to find out why. And what I'll try to do is when I go back to my work, to my family, to my community, to activism, to Sangha life, I'll try to do the same. So finally, before we just move to Dharma sharing for 10-15 minutes, I haven't been able to speak that much about the Diamond Sutra, but in November there is an Order Aspirant Retreat where I'll have a chance and more time to offer a more comprehensive talk, along with Vari McCluskey. I think it's in November, who will also talk about true love. I'll hand over to John, who'll put us in Dharma sharing rooms.